Hi, and we are live in Tobago Update Studios. This is a special edition or a special viewing of For the Hour where we will discuss the budget presentation that was just concluded a few hours ago by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Com Imbert. All right, so we have a special program for you tonight where we'll be airing out all the different talking points as it relates to the country and, of course, as it relates to Tobago, because we know that everything that was said has national implications here in Tobago as well. We have to deal with the different enactments and policy directives that was laid out plainly by Mr. Imbert. All right, I hope that you have had a good weekend, and I hope that the news that came from the budget today was well received by the populace of Tobago. Obviously, we're going to talk about some of the points, but there were some good things we could say that the population would be pleased about. All right, but as I say, I hope that everybody's having a good, productive week so far. All right, and I hope that this budget, we're going to have a lot of discussions throughout the week on the budget. Of course, you're going to have the debate, budget debate, and everything like that. But outside of that, I hope that the Tobago population has started the week well, and so that the rest of the week will follow. I know I always like Mondays. Mondays is time to get down to business. All right, we get back to business and we continue on with what we have going on. All right, so to continue on our program tonight, we always bring on the esteemed panel. You know that we have an esteemed panel that would share their viewpoints. All right, and tonight I want to introduce the panel before we move into the key points. Firstly, we have Mr. Curtis Williams. Mr. Curtis Williams is the chairman of the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. All right. We have a second Curtis, Mr. Curtis Douglas. So we have two Curtis on the panel tonight. All right. Mr. Curtis Douglas is the president of the All Tobago Fisherfolk Association. And we have joining us online tonight, Ms. Kay Trotman, who is the PRO of the Innovative Democratic Alliance. Good night. Ms. Kay, hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Lovely. All right. So just some overarching points from the budget tonight. We have the total budget for fiscal 2023-24 is $59.29 billion TT dollars, that is. And of that, we always get down to what Tobago has to receive from that, right? And Tobago has to receive 2.585 billion TT dollars of that 59.29 billion, which represents 4.365% of the national budget. All right. We also it's broken down for 2.298, so just below 2.3 billion in recurrent expenditure, and there is 260 million for our development program, 18 million for our URP program, and 9.2 million for our CPEP program as well. This represents an increase of 64.2 million from 2023. All right, from the 2023 fiscal year. All right, so those are the overarching figures that we have for our from our budget presentation that was just read by the finance minister. All right, so obviously there's a million things that would have put different policy directives that came out that the government is planning to do for the next year. But I always have to ask, what are the initial thoughts on the budget summarized, right, for the panel, so that we could get down into the nitty-gritty of what we need to talk about, all right? So we're going to start online first with Ms. Kay Trotman. Ms. Kay, hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
All right. So I wanted to ask you, what was your initial thoughts on the budget presentation that was just read?
Okay, despite everything that was said, what was left with me is the fact that once again, Tobago is not considered as a true partner in the development agenda and diversification of the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. We were treated just as the Trinidad perspective has always been of Tobago, as a ward of Trinidad of 60,000 people who are considered to be an expense on the Trinidad economy. And that is quite unfortunate with a budget that is labeled, let me see if I get it correctly, building capacity and growth in these challenging times. It was quite disheartening for me from all positions, not just a political position, but also as a member of the private sector, the small properties in the tourism sector, that Tobago was still seen as a drain on the national economy by what was given to us, the same 4.3% at a time when Tobago has the potential to play a major role in development, and therefore we would have needed to prepare Tobago for that additional role and responsibility.
Right. So coming from Kate, so she thinks that it was more of the same. More of the same. All right. So Mr. Williams, generally, what is your view on what you just heard in the budget presentation?
Sure. Good night, everyone. I really wonder why it was so long. It was a long story, extremely long. I just came from my office to deal with it. And then I'm looking for the key points. And the key points that speak to business in Tobago. And coming out of that, I mean, some of the issues that the THA plague with is funding. And so when you only give $260 million for development, then I ask myself, what we're really going to do with that? Knowing that the THA incur a lot of debt from the last regime in terms of payment to these contractors and suppliers, and I don't see, or I didn't hear anything about how we're going to treat with that debt. So we will all wait and see what the breakdown from the other ministries will be, so that how they want to treat with that debt coming forward.
Yeah, because that debt is astronomical, and so it seems as though the government wants us to continue to pass it along into the future, instead of having to actually hit the debt head on and do some servicing and reduction of that debt.
Correct.
All right, because if it is that we intend to seriously generate the revenue that we have to make on this island to service the debt, then it will take investment that we will need to get from the government.
That's correct.
Right? So, Mr. Douglas, coming to you now, summarizing your thoughts on the budget presentation.
Well, good night, and good night to all the loyal listeners and to those who just happen to be here, share the live and let me just deal with Tobago business. Now, my whole concept of the budget, or my review of the budget, or my input or my comment on the budget, first to start with, this is a Trinidad budget. This is not a budget for Tobago.
Is it not usually though?
Well, I just say, I just want to make it very clear. This is not a Tobago budget, nor to improve Tobago. All I could say, what I would say is quite clearly, I would have listened to the tune when the subvention or Tobago allocation was being read out by the finance minister, and his tone and action spoke volume. And by the end of his tone, he would have said, good luck.
Good luck with that.
It's a Batman thing, so good luck. Right? So it's a joke for him. Right? Because given the amount of funding that he would have allocated for Tobago, it's quite a disrespect to Tobagonians each year. Every year, right? And I don't know, as Mr. Williams would allude to, 200. What could we possibly do? I see our harbor need refurbishing. Our capital, I see where Mr. James would have started to try to allocate to refurbish. There is no room for Tobago in the terms of growth and development, even in the business sector. It is sad. It is real sad. And Mr. Chavez have a lot of work to do in his allocation to his, how he's going to allocate this money to health and to agriculture and to tourism.
Definitely.
And I mean, and one other thing, it seems like even Carl is more concerned, even in him, is more concerned about Carl interests outside of Trinidad, outside of Tobago, in the terms of expansion. I didn't hear anything about increasing flights for Tobago. Yeah, nothing. So Tobago people have to suffer, right? This is a Trinidad budget preparing for election. I don't know, probably 2025. I don't know, but I am very disappointed in this budget as it does not speak to help the growth and development in the fishing industry, nor for Tobagonians.
Right.
So that is just how I start off my first part of my budgetary speech.
Well, let me go towards the most immediate or the biggest thing that is jumping out of the budget generally, right? First point, right? And I think to everybody in Trinidad and Tobago by now would have heard this news that the minimum wage would have been increased to $20.50 per hour. Was it from 1750?
Yeah.
From 17.
Right. So from 1750 to 2050, an increase of $3, right, per hour. All right. So I just want to put that out there to the panel generally, because we will have had, everybody here would have had business interests, right? I know that the employees and everybody who's working on that level would be very happy to hear that, you know, the pay is going to get a slight increase. They're going to get a little bit more per month, right? But just to get the ideas on the panel, what do they think that this $20.50 per hour is now going to have, what effect that it's going to have on the economy at large? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Curtis, seeing as though that you have the interests of the business community in Tobago.
Well, the increase of minimum wage from 1750 to 2050, most of our members do pay beyond the 1750 minimum wage. But in realistic now, as the minimum wage increased from 1750 to 2050, the expectation of all the employees is that if I'm on 21, I'm now supposed to go to 24.
Oh, okay.
So the expectation is that you will have to increase whatever rate I am presently at. And we know in one industry, especially the security industry, where they are probably the last on the food chain.
Yeah.
And it's not only you, the person who paying, but when you go to do your bidding process, some of these government agencies and government pays probably $20, $24, $25 an hour to you as a contracted security. So you can imagine now you have to pay $20.50 or more, because you definitely have to pay more than the $20.50. And so what is actually left? Nothing. And so I am seeing that definitely there will be an increase in services in terms of costs for the clients going forward come next year. And it's something that we all look forward in the food and beverage industry. KFC pays their workers, Subway, about $20 an hour. So they will now have to cater for that increase, because the expectation is that $3 more. So everybody expect to get $3 more on whatever the salary they're getting now per hour. So if you're getting 25, they expect $3 more, 28. If you're getting 24, you expect $3 more, 27. So it's a huge expectation. And I know in some instances, this will hit some of our bottom line budget, probably over $60,000 per month, based on the amount of employees you have in that category and how it faces you. So you can, coming out of the pandemic, there's no way you're going to absorb that. It definitely got to be passed on. And hence the reason why I expect security services and other services, they definitely, the cost will go up.
Right. Right.
If I can jump in,
Go ahead.
while there is an expectation and while the population may feel happy at the increase in minimum wage, there is also an expectation from the business sector that the labor force now would have to be a lot more productive than it is for that increase not to have a negative effect on the business sector and economy as a whole. It cannot be that I'm now getting increased minimum wage and I need to and I'm going to be operating the same old way. It is an expectation that labor productivity has to go up for that whole increase in minimum wage to have a positive impact on the economy. Otherwise, it is going to be a double-edged sword. While the labor is enjoying the increase in the minimum wage, it really does not impact positively on purchasing power, which is a real issue. The purchasing power that the consumer or the workforce has with the kind of salary they have. So we need to ensure that the purchasing power of our labor force with this increase is what is manifested real GDP, real increase, and not just the nominal value in terms of the dollar amount. Because all that is going to happen, it will trigger that spiral of increased expenses in production. And with increased expenses, that increase in the minimum wage would not make a difference. And there will still be that call for increase in minimum wage because the impact of the purchasing power is not going to be felt.
Yeah, you always have that issue when you try to impact wages directly, because you impacting wages touches inflation. Because when you do the math, I think the minister said that it's about a 17% increase in the minimum wage. When you think about companies that has a lot of employees that remain on that level or close to the minimum wage, when you have a 17% increase drastically like that in your bottom line, yeah, as Mr. Curtis said, you have no choice but to pass that on. So for somebody like the KFC, the Subways or whatever, you had to look to expect increases very soon in those prices, because even over the last couple of years, they increased because of raw materials costs. Yeah. Now the government came in and now we hit them with a 17% increase in labor costs. So it's really, as Ms. Kate Chapman said, it's a real song and dance you have to play, because as an employee, you get a little bit of release, but then all the groceries going up, and then your rent going up, and then your services going up, right? And then before you know it, that little increase is gone, right? It's completely gone. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
That is not to say that we don't need to look at minimum wage. What it is saying is that there is an expectation that this business sector will now have of its employees to increase efficiency of operation. So businesses would now be putting in place probably different systems that will call on the workforce to be more efficient in their operation and not gets carried away with the slacking that unfortunately happens in some of the industry where labor input into production happens. There is an expectation that business operators will have of the workforce with this new increase in the minimum wage.
Mr. Douglas, what do you think? You think that the little increase that they get, well, I can't say little increases. That's quite an increase. Do you think that would bring sufficient ease to the workforce, or is it playing with fire?
Well, what's up? No, listen. I don't want to. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, the increase was needed, right? The increase was needed. I mean, for how long? How many years now they hadn't had an increase in minimum wage?
I think it's 2019.
And
for 5 years.
Right, for 5 years.
4 years. Yeah.
4 or 5 years, right? And we want to compare ourselves with the United States dollar for dollar, because we expect people to produce as well as they. But what I am saying is basically I have a contract with let's say the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and I employ at least 50 people, right? And my contract with the state I would have bid for my contract at, let's say $20, right? And then with that now, the increases came. The government haven't subsidized anything to ensure that I now would be able to pay or meet the demands of the increase.
Right.
That wasn't said. He didn't even look ahead, futuristic. He just created the increase and said, as of from January, this is what's going to happen. So you have a contract for next year, right? And you would have bid based on the minimum wage, right? So how am I paying that staff? So that means either one of the two things I have to do. I will have to either cut staff, right, to also meet demand, or I could either run into receivership,
Okay.
right? It's two options. So as a family man and a businessman, receivership is not part of the equation. So one have to think that Mr. Imbert did not do his requisite research in the terms of navigating, in the terms of when he increased the minimum wage from 17 to 2050. Right? This would hurt business people. And as Ms. Chapman said, we know people now have to work more harder because things have now become tighter. Because minimum wage increased, so obviously I have to pay the same price for raw material.
Correct.
So how am I going to meet that demand? Right? Something have to give. And when we're thinking about building a nation, we have to look at all of the avenue before we make those type of decisions. No, as I said, I agree with the minimum wage, but we must also look. So, for example, let's say by January we'd have a surplus, and all people with existing contract will have a 10% bonus based on it to cover that deficit. That is not done. You know what they may do? They might rush to have a quick contract, so you have to go and rebid for a contract at a different price. So, I mean, that is quite difficult. But you have to have more value for your money, because now I expect people to work more and be on time and to produce, right? Because it's very difficult on my business, right? So, because I bid based on the minimum wage. Right? I bid based on the minimum, and when you come up and hit us with this, it's very challenging for us. So as opposed to the minimum wage, it's good for the people, but it also kind of hurtful for my business.
Right. What I see is that when you do something on one side, you have to make sure you do something on the other side.
That's correct.
To make sure
Yeah.
that it doesn't leave things to run. Because, I mean, sometimes you make a change on one side in the employees, and you have the full effect that people have to feel on the other side, which is the business sector, the private sector, sorry. And the government might be able to absorb that cost, but small businesses, they might not be able to absorb that cost. I see one of the biggest effects on this would be small businesses.
Yeah. Definitely, yes.
And not cutting it. This will hurt Tobago even more.
Yeah.
Because Tobago pay more for raw product than Trinidadians. When you build a house, when I'm a contract, I build a house. When you build a house in Tobago, you could build 2 in Trinidad. Right? You could build 2 in Trinidad. So it's very difficult, because now when you bid, they're trying to tell you, control a bit, try it down. So there's no room for much profit. There's no room for much. It's hurting businesses. But there's nothing in place to help us to say, well, okay, I would have put something in place. So here what? Mr. Douglas, if you would sponsor a football team or a school, this or that, you could get that by the end of the year. Nothing was put in place to cushion the businesses. So as a matter of fact, as I said, this is a Trinidad budget, and I really don't know how Mr. Chavez is going to treat with this, because he has to juggle this, because in the terms of development, I could see quite clearly, this wasn't a budget. They don't consider Tobago. This budget did not have Tobago people in hand. In the terms, I'm talking about in the fishing community, whereby we have the problem with the Bajans and foreign investors coming in our waters. We have in the terms of growth and development and paying our taxes. None of the sort in the terms of the oil industry paying the taxes in Tobago. Nothing was set for on that point to help to boost, to build Tobago so that we can navigate in a more meaningful way. So that was a disrespect.
So I had it. Right. So we have to take a break. Mr. Chapman, we have to take a break. Hold that thought. When we come back, right, we'll continue the discussion. We're having a special viewing tonight of tonight's program on the budget presentation. We'll be right back.
Jimmy's Holiday Resorts has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, fully self-contained apartments located at the heart of Crown Point. Minutes walk to the popular beaches, restaurants, bars, and the airport. Enjoy our amazing amenities such as fully equipped apartments, complete with Wi-Fi, AC, TV, and a pool, and a mini-mart on the compound. Call 639-8292 or 8929. Jimmy's Holiday Resorts is your family's home away from home. Mount Pleasant Credit Union back to school loan promotion. Loans up to $15,000. Requirements: job letter and a payslip no more than 1 month old. Utility bill, copy of book list, salary deduction, 10% down payment. For self-employed persons, evidence of income and expenditure. Bank statement 12 to 18 months. Other supporting document. Promotion ends October 18. Contact us at 639-8375 or 8108 or check us out on www.mpcutobago.com or email us at loan@mpcutobago.com. Mount Pleasant Credit Union's back to school loan promotion.
Everybody only worrying. Never ever worry. Don't mind how things looking hard. I tell them never ever worry. If your life can't get damaged bad. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider, Tatil is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. Don't mind if life make you sad. I tell them never ever worry. If your house get flooded out real bad. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider, Tatil is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. If sickness catch you off guard. I tell them never ever worry. If times fall on you real hard. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider, Tatil will always be here for you. Never worry about a thing. Tatil, where people are people. You know what I mean.
We are going on a new journey. Tobago now has its very own carnival.
She like loud music and
Platinum touch.
Right now, Tobagonians are just currying down to Bon Accord, right in Stobie Local Road. You know why? To come down and shop at Authentic Builders General Hardware, the only hardware store in Tobago that is giving you guys Trinidad prices. So for instance, such as steel, 1/2 inch and 5/8, $7,895. 5/8 construction ply for $260. Every single thing that you will need to do your home renovation or start your new construction, we have it right here. And to get your quotation, it's very easy. Just WhatsApp us at 272-1990 and we will do your free WhatsApp quotation for you.
And we're back with this special episode of 40 Hour where we are discussing the 2023-2024 budget as laid out by the Finance Minister, Mr. Colm Imbert, just a few hours ago. All right. So we left off. Ms. Kay Trotman had something to add. I'm going to give her an opportunity to do that before we move on to the next point. If you remember.
Okay, I
Ms. Kay.
was just about to piggyback on what Mr. Douglas has said in terms of what would have been added on the other side of the equation, an increase in minimum wage. But what would have been added on the other side that will allow for that increase in the real purchasing power of employees, which is really what the minimum wage as a shortcut is trying to do nominally. What should have also happened is that we should have seen at the national level some sort of concessions on basic food items so that the dollar could have stretched more than just giving that increase. $3 is not going to make a major difference when the price of everything goes up. So right now, what is going to happen is that our chief secretary would have to now demonstrate his leadership and governance capabilities in terms of communicating with the Tobago population as to how it is we need to position ourselves now going forward with all that is happening. He has to now, in fact, starting from 2 seconds, 1 second after the budget was finished, the real budgeting process for Tobago starts in terms of recalibrating that wish list that it has been said it was, to now look at how can we really allocate funds to the kind of projects that will stimulate the Tobago economy and will bring ease to some of the distress that not just the economy is feeling, but that individuals are feeling. So right now, that would be a major concern, but it also speaks, maybe if our stance, I'm just saying, maybe if our stance was not always as confrontational, but we are showing that we know what we want and we are educating the Trinidad Parliament on the part Tobago can play in national development. It's not just about giving Tobago what Tobago deserves, It's about giving Tobago what Tobago needs to elevate its ability to contribute to national development. It's not just about giving something willy-nilly that is not going to bring back return. It's about allowing us to develop the capabilities that Tobago and the potential that Tobago has to be a major diversification pillar, not just for Tobago, but for the nation that is Trinidad and Tobago. So enough investment would have needed to be placed, I would like to say, in this half of the country, not just 60,000 people. We need to look at Tobago as the other half of Trinidad and Tobago with resources and potential that could be of major positive impact to the national development and diversification agenda.
Right. And moving on to the next point, the THA, as you had said, the THA, in its budget presentation that took place on June 26, we were here discussing that we had a special program that night as well. During that budget presentation, we had made an ask of 4.54 billion TT dollars. All right, and the government has allocated, and I like to say allocate and not given. All right, the government has allocated 2.585 billion, which is $2 billion, just below $2 billion short. Right, of generally what we ask for in order for us to move Tobago's development along. And I didn't even think that 4.5 billion was a big ask, to be honest, because there has been more inflated budgets in the past, right? Seeing as though, once again, we have asked and we have received but a fraction, right? I just want to get the thoughts on from the panel of where they think the government sees us really as our capability to manage that money and take Tobago forward to our next level. Mr. Williams, I will start with you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we know there's no way we got our allocation that we did ask for before. And so the THE have to come with innovative ways of making money, of cutting and slicing as they go along. We talk about the direct investment from abroad, and we ask about the land license, and we ask that the THA manage that process or just get rid of it totally, so that we could encourage foreign direct investment.
Right.
And there's nothing mentioned in the budget about that. And sometimes I wonder if our stories don't reach Trinidad, it falls somewhere between Trinidad and Tobago, because these are the things that will assist Tobago in getting some of the funding that it so desire. But when we ask for these things, and I mean, not even a hint, so then it leads to what kind of thinking? It's a really disturbing thinking. I mean, the minister mentioned things about SME, but that most of us, some percentage of the business that is cash-based, that don't have a bank account. But can you really try to open up a business account and see how difficult it is?
I think the minister never really tried. He never really tried to open up business account on his own.
Difficult the amount of
But he probably has
things
things to
ask
do for
you
him.
for. And not only that,
Your blood type and all that.
and then when you do open the account in some banks, they give you a savings account and tell you, well, you have to run that account for a number of months to a year, and let's see how things go, and then we will think whether we could give you a checking account. So what happens in that time frame you run in that savings account? When you get a check now, when you deposit the check, what do you have to do? Then take out the cash and go and pay the same. So what you're talking about, you're trying to tell me to get to digital, and no way. Getting online, even a credit card machine, sometimes it takes you up to 2 years. I'm waiting on a wireless one from one of the banks, and I can't even get it. So what the SME really will have to suffer, and just to move into the digital age that we all spoke about, and look at the percentage on the credit card machine. Sometimes it's 4 to 5%. So you, the SME, paying 4 to 5%, and the larger company paying 1%. So it's not fair. So somehow the minister need to get in line with what really happening in business. I know he's a businessman, but he probably will pay the 1%. He's big. But we, the small ones in Tobago, we pay the 4 and the 5% to have online, to have this credit card machine facility, and then to open the bank account. We definitely going through all these things, and they give you a savings account, not in a checking account. And so you see all those issues that we have in Tobago just trying to operate a SME. Really, really, really difficult.
Yes, the ease of doing business is definitely on the lower end for most people, especially when it comes to the smaller businesses. We have, as you spoke about, the access to, and there is, as you said, Mr. Williams, there is a big disconnect, and I always get this from the minister when he is speaking when it comes to socioeconomic things. Yeah. There's a big disconnect about what he thinks goes on in the country and what actually goes on in the country. So sometimes he comes across a little bit ignorant of the fact that there are these things in place that normal people need that normal people deal with, difficulty that they deal with, that you're not necessarily seeing, especially when it comes to the banks, dealing with the banks and so forth, right? Because
that is what, gentlemen, we cannot assume that Trinidad is fully aware of what is necessary for the development of Tobago. We can't assume it. We have to educate them. We have to walk them through the process. And it's not about the Prime Minister is Tobagonian, therefore he should understand the plight of Tobago. Don't assume that. Don't assume that. We need to, and the fact that we have always been getting the lower end of the DRC means that our needs and our peculiarities have not registered and is not resonating with the Trinidad half of Trinidad and Tobago. So we now have to step back, and we have to take the approach that we need to walk the other half of Trinidad and Tobago, the country, through the process of what is needed to make this half Tobago a lot more equipped and capable of contributing positively to the development, to national development, not just development of Tobago for itself, but to national development as a whole. If we cannot make that connect, I dare say we will be continuing down this process for years to come.
$4.36 as my brother Max James liked to represent it in a dollar figure. So last year it was $4.25. So I think it's $4.36. So every dollar that is spent in Trinidad, Tobago gets $4.36 of every dollar. All right, but one of my economics partners in Barbados told me this one time. Government doesn't necessarily like to give you something and leave it as that. They give you with one hand and take with the other hand, right? So I say this to cue up the public servants getting their back pay. Well, there's a promise. Let me say, I can't say for sure that they're going to get it, but there's a promise, a commitment by the government to pay $1 billion in back pay payments to public servants by Christmas of 2023. All right. On the other hand, we also have to queue that up with property taxes coming next year at the end of fiscal 2024. And we also have to queue that up with the utilities increasing next year because they want to increase WASA and the anti-tech rates as well. They're currently in the process of reviewing that billing system. All right. So, yes, the back pay coming. And the back pay is well deserved. Yes. But there is also the increase in taxes and utilities that also has to come as well. So I want to ask the panel what they think about the back pay and also in concurrent with the increases in utilities and living expenses.
I understand you want to talk about the concurrent with the living expenses and the back pay. But as I said, I don't believe in mamagism budgets. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in smoke screens because that is just a smoke screen. Mm-hmm. Because the union hasn't agreed on so many things, which he would have made promises about, right? Which he alluded to.
So the union didn't say yes yet, but yet.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And also he would have even touched on the age of retirement. Speech would have been leading the public that it is a done deal at the age of 65 now you will now retire.
Yeah, that's almost certain.
So and also he would have been leading that the energy bill, which is the electric bill, would have raised, and there would have been some implementation of raise of water rate and stuff like that. So he would have led to that, but he would have made it also very clear that hey, property tax is here, and whether you like it or not, you have to pay. And if you're renting, note that the government taking their portion as well.
Correct.
Right? So is here not only property tax, he would have now incurred a next rental tax upon the property tax, which you have to pay. So that rental tax is different from the property tax. So if you have a business, a house that is renting and rooms at let's say $3,000 a month, you're $50 every month. Make no mistake about it. Okay? So he would have increased so many things in a very acute manner, right? And then also usher you to tell you, hey, public servants, don't worry. Before the Christmas, you're all going to get some goodies, right? But notwithstanding, he would have not heard the concern of the Tobagonians. Because there's an old saying what my grandmother used to say to me, come stay with me and come live with me are two different things. Because, yeah, what? In Bert and them in their palace in Trinidad, and they only visit Tobago. They don't live in Tobago, so they won't feel the pain that the Tobagoan businessman and the day-to-day life of the normal average citizen of Tobagonians. You would have had this budget allocation for Tobago, for Tobago, but you would have also heard about how many houses, how much funding would have set for the growth and development in the housing structure for Trinidad.
Yes,
not for Tobago. But yet still,
and how much they give out in the past 4 years.
And yet still, Tobago couldn't even get $3.8 billion. And not to add insult to injury, you would have Shell, BPTT, right? And Woodside making over $1 billion US every year in profit from the waters of Tobago. And you know what is so ironic? I've been advocating for the fishing industry because the fishing industry in Tobago is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But no, Mr. Imbert and them have yachts. So he would have made preservation for yachts. Right? He would have made preservation for yachts. But here what we wouldn't make preservation for commercial fishing, whereby with the commercial fishing, what it will do for Tobago, it will create employment for young people. And I make no apologies. Once you come in the fishing industry and the downstream project, I'm talking about $10,000 to $15,000 a month. Right? And if we are to talk about the commercial industries, right? Meaning we're making that transition from pirogue to commercial boats, right? Nothing was said for the growth and development for the GDP of Tobago. But yet still, we hear in the building big highways, how much billion, and how good from this budget the economy is performing.
Yes.
They would have
The
praised the
non-manufacturing
growth
sector.
and development of this economy, right? That it was doing so good, but yet still, you couldn't find it within your reason and your scientific evidence and research to give Tobago at least $3.8 or $3.5 billion for development. When the oil contractors, they're really getting money to pay the contractors.
And even from the winner from the last administration too.
Curtis,
Yeah, definitely.
come on.
But you know, it's also interesting with that property tax. The property tax, the minister is indicating that it would provide additional income for the municipalities in Trinidad to have monies to do the work for the various burgesses. Does that mean increase income to the Tobago House of Assembly since Tobagonians will be
To
paying
know that,
property tax?
does that go into
mean
our
increase
fund?
allocations to Tobago as a municipality to get done what it needs to be done?
There needs some clarity there because you can't be paying property tax to the government in Trinidad. That's not fair.
Curtis, so this means that all these oil companies, Shell and Woodside, will now be paying the taxes in Tobago?
No.
Wait, what I want to know is property, so I want to know. I want to know.
You know, the part that bothers me is, that part that mentioned 2019 to 2023, the minister indicate the Sea Bridge cost $1.2 billion. And then the Air Bridge cost $674 million. And then in the back of that, you have to see how much empty seats. What's the rationale behind saying that into the budget? I really don't understand that. And it tells me a story. And I don't want to repeat it, but it tells me a story. There's no need to sink that home in the heads of the Tobagonian that, hey, you guys are costing us $1.2 billion over 4 years on a Sea Bridge and the Air Bridge. So keep quiet, don't talk too much. All right, Carl going and expanding services. We're going to get 4 additional ATR, and then ATR going and run up the island. We're going to get 3 jets, and them jets going and do X, and the cargo and so forth, but nothing for Tobago.
And why didn't Mr. Imbert respectfully did not see how much revenue the pipeline that Shell run from outside Castara to Trinidad, how much revenue? I'm only speaking about this one. I'm not speaking about the Woodside. I'm just speaking about Shell right now. Right? Me ain't talking about BPTT that have their reserve in Tobago waters that are having how much barrels. Me ain't talking about that. I'm just talking about one. And I'm certain, I make no apologies. Right? That they are earning more than $1 billion US every year. And you trying $1 billion US is 7
billion TT.
7 billion TT. And you telling me you can't give us 3? 3?
There's one company.
And that is just one company. And more so, you didn't even look into, which we would have spoke about, whereby you need to make the transition, whereby we now start to import 4-stroke machines instead of 2-stroke machine. 4-stroke machine burn less petrol.
Yeah.
Right? So the 2-stroke, they're dumping it into the Caribbean, and you did not try to make that a surgeon to ensure that we reverse that cycle, so that here what the people and them who bring in these machines have a tax exemption, so you don't have to pay no taxes on this
On the 4-stroke.
for 3 years. Okay, so you work with the association. They make the recommendation to ensure that there is no bubble, to ensure that they have the 4-stroke. So when you used to pay $1,000 to go and fish, right, to get a yield, you're now paying $500, so that you also have it dated. So you have data collected, and you will be able to monitor the growth and development, and it would also contribute to the gas emission that is being produced by these
The
machines.
2-stroke engines.
So who is trying to fool? But yet still, you're talking about digitizing the society, which is the country, but you haven't made any preservation for the old people who does not know even how to operate a mobile phone. So if they don't have a child or a grandchild to assist them digitally, they are lost. They are lost. So we must take into consideration each and every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago when we are talking about budgetary allocation for the growth and development of Trinidad and Tobago. And that was not done. And I'm grossly disappointed by his aggressive way in which he would have delivered his cancerous and notorious budget to Trinidad and more so to Tobago.
It is such a disadvantage being virtually, because I have to fight my way to get into the passion of the discussion. But gentlemen, I want to say that it is because it is now our responsibility as Tobagonians, our responsibility as the THA and the people of Tobago to truly educate the Trinidad population on the importance of Tobago, and to change that perception that Tobago is a ward of Trinidad that is an expense drag on the economy of Trinidad, not the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, on the economy of Trinidad. So Trinidad believes they are doing Tobago a favor by granting them the 4.3% to manage themselves. That is why he can tell the THA after he gave the allocation for Tobago, I wish them good luck.
Good luck.
There is no level of relationship between this half of the nation, Tobago, and the half of the nation that is Trinidad. And I dare want to say that means our chief sec has to be the bigger man and navigate and direct how that relationship ought to go. He would have to change his stance. My mother say, when your hand in the lion's mouth, you have to ease it out. Even if you think you're right, you can't always be right and strong and lose the war.
All right.
You have to strategize to make sure you win the war, so that we would have to take some strategic decision and some strategic approaches that people may think we weak, but there's no weakness. We have to recalibrate our strategy for dealing with how we navigate a relationship with Trinidad to ensure Tobago's development and contribution to the national pie.
All right, so we have to take a break. We're going to take a break real quick, and we'll come back with the interesting discussion. Right, everybody holds your thoughts. Right, when we come back, we'll continue the discussion. All right, we'll be right back.
October will never be better. with Tobago, carnival fever. Okay, passage and come on over.
Wait, I don't even have suit and thing for this wedding. Why getting them things?
Well, the port my right over there.
Alright, thanks.
The Port Mall, where the varieties are large from your favorite stores, from restaurants to salons and from clothing stores to jewelry stores, located at Sanctus Hill, Scarborough, Tobago. Telephone number is 868-334-6589.
Wow. I didn't expect to see you here. Look good.
Thanks. It's all because of you and Port Mall. But here now I'm going to talk with you. You want to join me?
Yeah, that's okay.
Alright.
Beat the rush and come on down to the Port Mall.
Tobago Glass Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported.
Welcome to L'Image Parfait Day Spa, your urban oasis and wellness center. Our services includes massages, treatments, facials, pedicures, weight management, detox programs, and much more. Call us today at 624-1452 or 720-7474. Trinidad locations and Bonacord, Tobago at 273-7772. Let us treat you like the VIP you are.
All right, and we're back. We're continuing our special episode of 40 Hour tonight, where we discuss the budgetary presentation of the 2023-2024 fiscal budget that was laid in Parliament just a few hours ago by our Finance Minister, Mr. Corbett. All right, so as we left to go to break, and now we're back, right? We want to move on to the points of employment, and so. Everything that we talk about, everything we are talking about today is in relation to how it affects Tobago, all right? And so the minister laid in Parliament today that unemployment obviously would have spiked during COVID, right? Because especially when it comes to the private sector, most of them were ordered to shut down. Not that they had to shut, they were ordered to shut down by the government, and so they were able to keep on staff. And so the finance minister said that the unemployment rate would have dropped down to, I think, about 3.5%. That would be of all the employable persons in Trinidad and Tobago. But I want to ask, is that the situation we're seeing in Tobago? That would be the national figure. That may be the national figure. But is that the issue that we're seeing in Tobago? Because we see recently the issue with TATCO and how they let go workers, and we had the issue with Almando's, how he had to close when Cabo Star wasn't working and all of that. Is that the issue that we are facing with employment in Tobago? I'm going to put that to the panel.
I think one of the issues we have in Tobago in terms of employment is that there's a lot of vacancies still hasn't been filled, right? I mean, even when you look at works, it have people in works that has one gang have a checker and a foreman and one worker. Come on. There are vacancies there to fill. So I think Mr. Chavez have a duty whereby he has to now try to, in my opinion, my recommendation, if I was Mr. Chavez, I would have now decided to make these people permanent, or the casual worker permanent, and bring them up, right? In order to get that robust staff in the terms of meeting the needs of, cleaning, the health sector and stuff like that. There's a lot of vacancies. There's a lot of vacancies. And in the terms, when the minister spoke about unemployment, I think he was just basically giving a figure based on his statistics or his data.
That he has,
There's a broad data. I didn't think that was a data based on Tobago. I think that was just a broad statement of Trinidad and Tobago. The only time we hear anything about Trinidad and Tobago is when we're speaking broadly. You don't normally, when you listen to him in his budgetary speech, he said Trinidad, but then we said THE, Tobago. So there's that divide. And according to Ms. Chapman, they need to be really socially educated as well about Tobago and how the diaspora in Tobago is totally different from the diaspora in Trinidad. And what might work in Tobago may not work in Trinidad. And I'll draw an example for that. I'll draw an example. They would have passed a law in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago that no fisherman or fisherfolk should collect or full gas and put it in the car.
Correct.
Right? That's the law. Right?
Explain that a little bit for me.
All right. So you, as a fisherman, you want to get gas to go to sea.
To pay boat.
So you can't go by the gas station. You're not supposed to go by the gas station with a truck, a van, or a car in the back of it and fill that up to get that to go to sea. It is against the law.
Okay. So
what
has happened?
When they passed that law, they did not consider Tobago. Because in Tobago, we don't even have a refueling point.
In that close to the sea?
We don't have a refueling point, yes, on a jetty.
Right.
We don't have any of that. So when they passed that law, they didn't consider Tobago because they didn't understand
the situation in Tobago.
And it's the same thing what happened in the budget.
Yeah.
So when he tell Farley, Mr. Chavez, good luck, is a form that, all you do alone in Tobago, I ain't really care about all here. Right? So, I mean, come on. We have to be there in Trinidad, sit and they pass their judgment based on what they think Tobago should have. Right? And that is a challenge for every Tobagonian, and every Tobagonian have to take the responsibility to ensure that we make some, as Ms. Chapman said, some serious changes. Right? Because unemployment in Trinidad and unemployment in Tobago is too different. It's totally different. Yeah. Imagine you have a gang. We have a gang, and it only have a checker, a foreman, and a laborer.
And that is why the issue of autonomy is so important. It is not important because Tobago wants to pull away from Trinidad, It is important because Tobago has certain peculiarities that is different from the overall national economy that needs to be addressed when we look at any issues. So autonomy would allow Tobago through the THA to speak directly to those peculiarities as we go forward in preparing and in expressing what we can contribute to the national economy. So what Mr. Douglas mentioned about that refueling, since we can't fill containers and have them in our vehicles and then take them to our boats and fill our boats. If the Trinidad half of Trinidad and Tobago understood the peculiarities of the operation of fisherfolk in Tobago, then they would have understood that that law was detrimental to the operation of an industry in Tobago, and therefore would limit Tobago's ability to contribute to national development. And that is where the THA would have now had the ability to address that law by, I think what they call it is concurrence, because that law, in essence, would be detrimental to Tobago and its development, and therefore Tobago should have had the right to be able to say that law does not work for us, and therefore it needs to be either repealed or not enacted in Tobago, because that is detrimental to Tobago development and by extension to national development. And that is why autonomy is such a critical thing. And that is why we now have to take the stance again as to how do we educate not just the Tobago population on how autonomy is important to Tobago's development, but the Trinidad population of how autonomy is important for the development of Tobago and by extension, the development of Trinidad and Tobago. Let us not assume anything, gentlemen.
Right. I want to take it to you, Mr. Williams.
Sure.
Right. I always, right before the budget, you had to have an AS perk, because it is here. Usually you hear the finance minister speak about certain topics, and you know that you're going to get shaft in that topic, generally. Right? So right before the budget, we heard the minister speaking about the foreign exchange issue that we were having, right? And how that our foreign exchange reserves were dipping below where it's comfortable, right? And our spending, our US demands, and persons making purchases on overseas and stuff, and businesses making purchases, that was on the rise for the past couple of years. So I was expecting, because in general, this government is very, very, very restrictionary. So I was expecting, all right, more taxes, or probably more taxes on online passenger duty or something like that. You can't buy road, you can't go and buy this and that, or whatever the case. So more taxes you had to pay, right? But thankfully, that was not the case. We didn't see that. However, there is still the issue of accessibility of Forex for the SMEs. You have anything to say about the accessibility of Forex, Mr. Williams?
Well, sure. Well, we know for sure the credit card purchases, the bank cut it. And that, for a small business like SME in Tobago, especially the business that rely on importing products from abroad, and in most instances where you can't get US dollars, you used to use your credit card and make the purchases accordingly. Now that's cut. So you can imagine some of these small businesses, the boutiques, the hairdressers who have to get their supplies, and there's no cash to get much, and you can imagine the challenges they go, and then now they have to go on the black market now looking for
which
US,
is
way
more expensive.
Which is way, but it's against the law. But you have no choice. You have to survive.
Exactly.
You have to survive.
I mean,
as a business. And now the minister mentioned some CSME Forex facility that he's probably going to roll out. And I'm waiting with bated breath to see what this Forex facility will be all about. I mean, again,
and through what institution you're going to roll it out?
That's correct. And will it serve the small business in Tobago? That's my biggest fear, you know. All these nice things they speak about, but will it serve the small business owners in Tobago? And that's my biggest problem that we have with all that. I mean, he spoke about the Revenue Authority and the gap in taxes, $10 billion, you know, and then hence the reason why the Revenue Authority is essential. Great. I love the Revenue Authority. It's moving, putting things in the right direction. I'm happy about that, you know. But all things go in context. The credit union, I mean, that was a sore point, because the credit union grew significantly and they need some kind of act to control them. Because you have credit unions in Tobago that are not managed properly. Some of them have no AGM, some have no. It's all kind of craziness happening in the credit union movement, especially in small places like Tobago, and some kind of, because credit union moves a lot of money, and a lot of folks in Tobago have savings in credit union, and so the credit union need to be governed. They need to have a structure system that governs them, that properly oversight. The Commissioner of Cooperative, no, that's outdated. This one-man show thing outdated, where the credit union development, the credit union but within the THE, that department have no teeth at all. They can't do anything. I saw credit union or cooperative fighting among themselves, directors, and total madness going on in the industry. And they're dealing with finance. So I think it needs to be regulated, and I'm happy that they're really going to put something in place to regulate these guys, because sometimes they really go out of hand in the way they treat with folks' money. The unemployment, though, and I think for some strange reason, that Tobago should start collecting data. Because if we need to plan and separate data, if we need to plan and plan properly for the island development, we need to have data. All right. So before we can start saying all the lovely things, I think we should start collecting data, because we have to be data driven. So we make that development plan, and then we start to execute as we go along. But without data, we will be guessing. And there's a lot of guessing going on. Some numbers being battling around. You really want to, those numbers are correct? And you're not too sure. So I think within the THA, that development, that division that deals with planning, in some way or other, so start to collect data, because data is important to plan. Without we trying to plan in Tobago and we don't have proper data, we're wasting time. We're totally wasting time.
Kay, I want to talk to you a little bit about the tourism before we wrap up tonight. Because I know that, where you sit, you have keen insight on the tourism sector as it relates to Tobago. All right? So the minister boasted about 62% occupancy rate in the accommodation sector for the last...
And we're booming.
Yeah, so apparently we're booming in the tourism sector in Trinidad and Tobago. Is that what we're seeing in Tobago?
That's not what we're seeing on the ground. What you are seeing on the ground is that you may have some peaks at specific times of the month. You may have a peak, like when we are going to have Carnival, you might have a peak. You may have had a peak with Easter weekend and that sort of thing, but that does not run an industry. We need to ensure that we smoothen out that demand so that throughout the year, there is that constant flow of people into Tobago that deals with tourism, so that the tourism sector can benefit. So we need to look very carefully at what is the calendar of events in the short term within Tobago that ensures there's a constant flow of people into Tobago for various activities. We have to take a different focus on how we develop the tourism industry in Tobago. For example, we are talking sustainability and sustainable development in tourism, yet we are not very focused in that we are having unplanned development spring up in some of our eco sites, like on no man's land, where there's uncontrolled kind of development of business, because people have to make a living. So if they're not getting government jobs and they're not seeing any opportunities, they go and organically put up a business wherever they believe they can take advantage of. We're talking sustainable development, yet we are plagued by a level of noise pollution that is contradictory to the development of a green economy and to the development of green tourism. So we ourselves as Tobagonians need to be engaged in a conversation where tourism is concerned. What do we really want for tourism? We are asking that question over and over again. We have various pillars and niches that we focus on, yes, but is the Tobago population really in tune? The average man on the ground really in tune with what is the Tobago tourism thrust that we really want to make? I don't think sometimes that connection is there. And therefore, a kind of engagement has to happen, because I am having members fighting constantly with other people in their community where noise pollution is concerned. How do you deal with that? And we are left on our own to handle that. That is not something that can be handled at an association level at all, alone. It needs to have some directive also coming from the state with where the direction we go with that. So that there's some serious work that needs to happen on the tourism front, yes, That doesn't take away from whatever work is being done currently, but there is still a lot to be done.
Right. And I want to put this to you also, because one of the things I learned when I was studying tourism is that it's so fickle and it depends on so many other things to go right for it to work. Especially as it comes to Tobago. Firstly, for us to have a booming tourism industry, you have to get to Tobago first. And we have had a lot of issues with the air bridge and sea bridge when it comes to people actually getting to Tobago. All right? Do you see that becoming a bigger problem? Because the minister did not expressly speak to that issue in the budget. Do you see that being improved?
Well, definitely what the issue with the sea bridge and the air bridge recently that occurred has shown that Tobago's development, the risk that Tobago's development is exposed to, because if a necessary and essential service that is provided by the sea bridge and the air bridge, we cannot get it right, then we are in a precarious position of having to depend on Trinidad for things coming in Tobago. The question is now, what are we doing in Tobago to engage our population to be a bit more self-sufficient? What opportunities are there? What industries can be developed? What policies are being put in place at the level of the THA to ensure that we go down a particular path that doesn't leave us so exposed? Where does our food security lie? Why do we have to constantly import things from Trinidad? What is happening with the policies to ensure that we can focus on developing our Tobago agricultural sector? Why do we have to depend on kiss bread? We have so many bakeries around. How can we organize those various small producers in some type of business model that can address those issues? So even within those transportation issues that arose, there were tremendous opportunities that could have generated income possibilities for Tobago that we need to look closely at. But we need to engage our population in the kind of discussion where the connectivity is concerned, that autonomy is not just about saying Tobago has access to the oil in the waters or the revenues from the oil in the waters in Tobago. Yes, that's a part of it, but it also means Tobago has to get on board to do what is necessary on the ground that develops some of its indigenous business opportunities to contribute to the whole of the national development. So as long as we have issues like the sea bridge and are constantly depending on getting things from Trinidad in order to service the Tobago economy. In fact, Tobago is just a consumption market for Trinidad businesses. Sorry, Mr. Williams.
I want to take you back in the studio here.
That is exactly what it is.
We need to touch on this before we go, right? Crime.
Yeah.
And we're seeing all the time, every year, the crime is on the increase, and every year it's the same solutions with the crime. We throw more staff and we throw more money at the problem. All right? So the minister has indicated that they want to triple the amount of positions that are supposed to be available within the next fiscal. They want to move it from 300 officers to 1,000 officers to help deal with the crime situation. They also want to make an investment of 80 million in police vehicles. All right? It's as if we don't have enough police vehicles.
Again?
Right? Yes.
For them to break down again and
the
have
problem with
access
that. And I just want to touch on two little things, Ms. Chapman, before we reach the crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was no conversation about any sort of increased flights from whether it's Scandinavia or Europe or the American market, because there are a big market there for people to land in Tobago.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't even an increase in local flights, because so far what this budget speak to, what Mr. Embo speak to, is probably local tourism, right? He doesn't speak about international tourism. I would have seen Mr. Chavez and his team would have traveled, I think was to England, and then we have the Castara tourism TD or whatever. They would have received, the best, tourism destination in the Caribbean, right? So that is kudos. So what I'm saying, we received that, and there was nothing speaking directly to the improvement of flights and landing in Tobago. There was nothing for that in place, right? Right? No. As to crime, if you have kids and you're teaching them how to eat soup, that is what, even though you have 100 kids, that is what they would know, to eat soup, right? So when you take from employing 300 recruits to 1,000, and the training remained the same, what do you expect?
More the same.
Not the same results. You're increasing the service, the police services, right? And when you call an emergency, you can't even get a vehicle, right? All of them is parked up in some police station because of the transmission or some little problem. Poor maintenance, Poor maintenance. He did not review the basis of what is happening.
Causing the
crime.
problems,
We need to get down to the source of the problem. When we have a cancerous element, we need to get to the cause, the cancer. First, we discover is the cancer. The second step, we need to know what we could do to treat with this cancer. What we need. Do we need antibiotics? And the type of antibiotics? Or do we need garlic or bush to treat with it? And what do we need to do? Do we need to make it invasive or a non-invasive product action? That wasn't done. So he believed by speaking and flicking page, right, and said, we are going to increase. We are going to increase the number of police from 300 to thousands. And the training.
Flick them pages hard enough.
The training and the action of the police force still is the same. We're still getting the same complaint of corruptions, right?
Within this
space, right? And there's no transparency. He did not say each police officer that would have been trained will have a camera. So when they come at your house, this will be recorded. And if they don't put it on, it's a violation and they will be charged.
Yeah, because they have the technology, but they don't use it.
There is nothing in place, so that's a waste of money, right? Mr. Williams, I want to give you a bit to say, so I'm just giving you your time to say because you have limited time.
Well, with safety and security, I mean, he did mention that they're going to increase the recruits to 1,000 recruits per year, and the vetting unit, they're going to have a vetting unit and pay higher salaries, and they're going to look at some scanners for the port, spend $90 million on scanners. And
this is, sorry to interrupt you, this is for not in between Trinidad and Tobago, but
Trinidad.
In Trinidad.
Not
for goods coming into Trinidad.
Yes.
Correct.
But he mentioned that there are going to be some 4 large ones that for the containers, and I believe that's Trinidad, and handhold scanners, some smaller ones maybe 4.5 million for customs. I didn't see anything for Port Authority actually.
Right.
And
so that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Port Authority.
There's nothing for Port Authority.
Because we know that bridges.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And then $80 million for new vehicles and equipment for the police service to support community patrols, and a further $50 million for the sea patrol, the unit there, that riverine unit that they're going to establish, and which they're going to purchase some fast inshore patrol vessels. And yes, and these things sounds good, but I will ask upon the Minister of National Security to come and visit Tobago. Right? When he have some time after he completed his debate, come and visit Tobago and see what's happening on the island. Come and see the state of the police stations. Come and see the state of the fire service. Come and see the state of the prisons. Come and visit Tobago. And don't let it do no kind of, what they call it, wash wingle. As a minister coming to start to clean up here, come and visit them as they are. And you see the state, the condition these people are living and working under, right? You're going to spend $80 million in new vehicles. Sometimes the vehicles are not purpose-built because you have police vehicles that are fancy, nice SUVs, And trust me, those vehicles are not ready for the terrain of Tobago. So after driving probably up Mariah twice or going somewhere next, that's it, transmission going through or something else going, because the vehicles are so sophisticated and they're not purposely built for here. So you're going out and you get a contract from some supplier and they decide to give you 100 vehicles and they're all looking nice, but that's probably not
cut ribbon and do all kind of
they're
thing.
not purpose-built vehicles, so they really can't function here. Putting additional manpower is good, but again, the training of these manpower is critical, because you cannot be doing policing in the 60th century or the 19th century, and today you have to bring the police service up to scratch with what the criminals is doing today.
That's right.
So when a police is to come into the service and don't have the necessary background, especially like there is a financial crime, and he knows nothing about forensic accounting. He never have an idea what a balance sheet looks like or how, nothing about business. And so you bring them in and you decide what you're going to train them now. That don't make sense.
Doesn't.
You know, you have to bring somebody who already have the basic training in accounting or whatever, and then you know the specialized skills now you're at it. But if the person, all they have is O-levels and you're now trying to train them into these specialized areas, it really don't make sense.
Right.
So we had to look at the training as we
have to call it a night for tonight, right? We have exceeded our time. Sorry, Ms. Chapman, I know you wanted to add in there. We have exceeded our time. But
one little thing. Mr. Williams, I would like to say I'm not inviting the Minister of National Security to come here. I'm inviting him to accept the invitation from the Chief Secretary to visit here. And not just talk to him.
Like if it's Parliament.
Ministers accept the invitation from the Chief Secretary to come to Tobago and experience what happens on the ground with Tobago's part of the whole thing before they go back and make their decisions.
Great. All right, so I want to thank all the panelists for coming out tonight. Right, wonderful discussion. All right, but stay tuned, guys. Throughout the week, we're going to have continued discussions on the budget. All right, and I'll see you guys next week if there's nothing else. I'll see you guys next week. All right, have a great week.